Point number 6. And that is, for those of you who shoot non-living objects, this does not apply. You know, if you're a landscape photographer, if you shoot, you know, abstract imagery, whatever, doesn't apply. But the second you add human beings, you have just increased your degree of difficulty and time required by about 5 times you would if you did not include people. But I am strongly encouraging you to include in your projects. I think photographing people, and it looks like I've been hung up for 5 minutes.
We're hearing your voice, so that's good. You are a little hung up, but we can still hear.
As long as you can hear me, that's fine. I think a lot of times people are afraid to photograph people, and they're also afraid to photograph strangers. And I get it. It can be awkward, especially today when people assume that what you're doing is some slippery thing that maybe not on the up and up, or they assume that you are shooting and posting all the time. People don't like that.
Yeah.
So it can be, you can hear no a lot of people, you know, hey, can I photograph you? No. And then you talk to them a little bit longer, they figure out what you're doing, and they go, oh, okay, well, I get this now. It's a project. All right, yeah, cool, you can photograph me. And so humans basically increase your degree of difficulty, but I do think it really separates the best photographers from the middle of the pack, because if you can work around people you don't know, Gordon Parks, you know, first African American photographer at life.
He's amazing.
The guy worked in every environment imaginable. Yep. And
became an amazing filmmaker too. I mean, really fantastic.
Writer, composer, filmmaker,
wow.
Photographer, cultural icon.
Super talented. Yeah.
Yeah. That's rare.
To say the least. So we're up to number 7 now. Final point.
This is the last one.
Okay.
Number 7 is forget fame and just enjoy the experience. For some reason, and I think we can all guess why, I run into people all the time who are obsessed with becoming known or building a following or getting likes, and they are not happy people. And a lot of times the people around them are not happy because they're driving everyone crazy. Often, if you do that, if you go down that, especially if you're trying to get famous too fast, you can ruin the experience of being a photographer. So just relax. Yeah, forget fame, enjoy the experience.
Awesome. So we have some time for some questions. Jared, have you been tracking? I saw one flying by a moment ago. Oh, here we are. Where do you see videography and still photography coming together in a photo essay project? This is right there.
Great question. This requires a little backstory. If you go back to the 90s, in the journalism world, we were all told that video would save all of us, that journalists would be, every still photographer would be shooting video, and that the public demanded multimedia content. The truth is that was not the truth. And the newspaper industry burned an entire decade and spent literally hundreds of millions of dollars trying to convert newspapers into multimedia, when in fact what people wanted was just good journalism.
Yeah.
And simple, still, strong photographs were as way more powerful, way less expensive. And it's impossible to give a journalist 3 or 4 or 5 tasks at the same time and expect them to do great work. And I think that reality has continued today, where I'm on, oftentimes now as a creative, I'm on the hook. And Baja last week was a great example. I was on the hook for recording video, shooting stills, recording sound, and writing all at the same time. And I can tell you, after looking through all the work, there's not very much really good work in that week of work, because I'm trying to do 4 or 5 things at one time. That is not fair for anyone, but it has now become accepted and somewhat the norm to expect people to do all those things. I don't know anyone who really does all of those things at the same time really well. I know a lot of young filmmakers who are amazing at making cinematic content, but do not know how to tell a story. I know a lot of great still photographers who have completely watered down their still work because they're now trying to do video and stills. And oh, by the way, with video, your audio is about 50% of the equation. If you do not have great sound, it doesn't matter what you did on video. So it's really hard. I don't think this is ever going to change and go back in the other direction. I think it's only going to get worse. And maybe not worse is probably the wrong word, but I think multimedia content is going to become more and more and more common. I think motion content is really dominating right now. But if you're a still photographer, just start out just by making stills and taking notes. Just start there. And then if you get to the point where you feel very, very comfortable with that, you could also start maybe to record some audio, because you can hit play on an audio recorder or hit record and just go about your business and let it record. It's not like it's going to take a massive amount of concentration just to be recording things like ambient sound. But, I'm still a huge fan of print. I think photography is a story that is absolutely tailor-made for print, where you don't need sound. You just need great stills and great copy, and you've got yourself a project. That's still how I prefer to consume photography. I don't look at photography online for the most part. I wait for it to come out in print because I know what it takes to get something into print, and the amount of time and attention and consideration that things get when they go into print is at a whole nother level beyond the web. And so, yeah, multimedia is fun. I mean, I've had a lot of fun trying to learn how to do motion, but it's also taken away from the quality of my still photographs.
Okay, we got another one here. And, a number of photographers did make that transition. We were just talking about Parks. And then, of course, Jimmy Chin has gone from a still photographer to, really making pretty amazing films. So you can definitely do that.
And look at, you have movie directors like Luc Besson. Luc Besson was a still photographer. And the first time I ever saw a film of his, a film called The Big Blue, the first thing I thought when I saw it was this looks like still photographs.
Exactly.
There's something, the guy, whoever made this definitely knows his way around a still camera. Jimmy Chin's a good example, but there's a lot now. A lot of people who have transitioned over. But I also think it's the changing of that narrow gauge of photography itself. I think when Jimmy started, the outlets for photography were very narrow. We didn't have social, you didn't have the internet. He was primarily an athlete first. He's a skier and a climber. That's how I knew Jimmy Chin before he was a photographer, the climbing and the skiing part.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, I wouldn't necessarily to me, he's like a general creative now. He's a director, he's a filmmaker, he's a still photographer. He can do all these other things. I think that's very interesting. But also, I'm guessing, I don't know him, but a lot of the work he's doing now is with teams of creatives.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's no question about that. He's transitioned to a completely different level.
Yeah, I think a lot of good filmmakers know you've got to delegate. You've got sound people, you've got editors, you got producers, you got camera people. And I think sometimes we're fooled into looking at little YouTube clips or something and saying, oh, I'll go do that.
Yeah.
And then you look at the credits on the YouTube clip and you're like, wow, there's 10 people involved in that production. So, you can only do so much as an individual. And I think you have to pick your battles.
Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.